King Edmund was tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep could fix, but the kind that settled deep in his bones. Every day in the palace felt the same. Fake smiles, empty promises, and people who only told him what they thought he wanted to hear. He was surrounded by hundreds of people, yet he felt completely alone. One night, as he stood on his balcony looking out at the kingdom, he made a decision. He needed to escape, even if just for a little while. He wanted to see how real people lived, not the decorated version his advisors showed him during royal tours. So he did something crazy. He took off his royal robes and put on the simple clothes of a common merchant. He looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. Good. That was exactly what he needed. Before dawn, while the palace guards were changing shifts, Edmund slipped out through a servant's passage he had discovered years ago as a child. His heart pounded with excitement and fear. If anyone found out the king had simply walked away from his duties, there would be chaos. He traveled for 2 days on horseback, heading toward the distant villages he had only seen marked on maps. The further he got from the palace, the lighter he felt. No crown weighing down his head. No responsibilities crushing his shoulders. Just a man on a horse riding toward the unknown. Finally, he reached a small village called Millhaven. It was tucked between rolling hills and farmland, the kind of place that probably never saw visitors, let alone royalty. The houses were small and simple, some with thatched roofs that had seen better days. Smoke rose from chimneys as families prepared their evening meals. Edmund tied his horse outside a shabby inn and walked inside. The innkeeper, a heavy-set man with suspicious eyes, looked him up and down. Edmund realized he probably looked too clean, too well-fed to be an ordinary traveler. He would have to be more careful. He rented a small room on the second floor. It was nothing like his palace chambers. The bed was hard, the blanket was thin, and he could hear every sound from the street below. But somehow it felt more real than anything he had experienced in years. The next morning, Edmund walked through the village. The streets were muddy from recent rain. Children ran barefoot, their clothes patched and worn. Women carried heavy buckets of water from the well. Men worked in the fields, their backs bent under the sun. This was real life. This was what most of his kingdom looked like, and he had been too sheltered to truly understand it. As he walked toward the village well, he noticed a group of people gathered there. They were laughing, but it was not the kind of laughter that came from joy. It was cruel, mocking. Edmund moved closer to see what was happening. A young woman stood at the well trying to fill her bucket. She kept her head down, her long, dark hair falling forward to hide her face. The other villagers, mostly women around her age, stood in a circle watching her. Look at her, pretending she belongs here. One woman said loudly enough for everyone to hear. My mother says we should not even let her use the well. Another added. Bad luck follows her everywhere. The young woman said nothing. She simply filled her bucket as quickly as she could, water splashing on her worn dress. Her hands shook slightly, but she kept her face blank as if she had heard these words 1,000 times before. Edmund felt anger rise in his chest. He had seen cruelty in the palace, hidden behind polite words and fake smiles. But this was different. This was raw and open, and the woman receiving it had no power to defend herself. As she lifted her heavy bucket to leave, one of the men deliberately stepped into her path. She tried to go around him, but he moved again, blocking her way. The others laughed. The bucket was clearly too heavy for her thin arms, and she struggled to hold it while trying to find a way past. Edmund did not think. He simply moved forward and stepped between them. Excuse me, he said firmly, looking the man directly in the eyes. The lady is trying to pass. The laughter stopped. Everyone turned to stare at the stranger who had dared to interfere. The man blocking the path was bigger than Edmund, with arms thick from farm work. He looked surprised that anyone would challenge him, especially over someone like her. This is not your business, stranger, the man said, his voice carrying a warning. I am making it my business, Edmund replied calmly, though his heart was racing. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then the man stepped aside, muttering something under his breath. The other villagers dispersed, throwing curious glances at Edmund. Who was this outsider, and why would he defend the cursed girl? The young woman hurried away without looking at Edmund, her bucket sloshing water with each quick step. He watched her go, disappearing around a corner toward the edge of the village. That evening at the inn, Edmund asked the innkeeper about her. The man's face darkened immediately. You mean Rosalind, he said, spitting the name like it tasted bad. She lives alone in that broken cottage past the miller's house. Her mother was not married when she had her, if you understand my meaning. The mother died and the girl carries that shame. Bad blood, people say. Cursed from birth, Edmund felt sick. This woman was rejected and tormented simply because of circumstances she could not control. She had done nothing wrong, yet she was treated as if she were guilty of some terrible crime. That night, lying in his uncomfortable bed, Edmund could not stop thinking about Rosalind. The way she had held her head high despite the insults, the way her hands had shaken but she had not cried or fought back. There was a quiet strength in her that reminded him of the kind of courage he wished he possessed. He had come to this village to understand his people better. He had not expected to be so moved by one person's suffering, and he certainly had not expected to feel such a strong pull to do something about it. As he drifted off to sleep, he decided he would find a way to talk to her. Not as a king looking down on a subject, but as one human being reaching out to another. He did not know yet that this decision would change everything, not just for him, but for his entire kingdom. The next morning would bring him face to face with Rosalind again. And this time, he would not just be a stranger defending her from a distance. This time, he would step fully into her world, a world that would teach him more about life, love, and what truly mattered than all his years of royal education ever could. Edmund woke early the next morning with a strange feeling in his chest. Back at the palace, he would wake to servants opening his curtains, preparing his bath, laying out his clothes. Here he woke to the sound of roosters and cartwheels on the muddy street below, and instead of dreading another day of meaningless royal duties, he felt curious, almost excited. He dressed quickly and went downstairs. The innkeeper's wife was serving breakfast, simple bread and cheese with weak tea. It was nothing compared to the palace feasts, but Edmund found he actually enjoyed it. There was something honest about simple food earned through simple work. After eating, he walked through the village again, this time with a purpose. He wanted to find Rosalind's cottage. He told himself he just wanted to check if she was all right after yesterday's incident. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. Something about her had gotten under his skin. He followed the innkeeper's directions past the miller's house, toward the edge of the village where the proper houses ended, and the land turned wild. There, tucked against a small grove of trees, stood a cottage that looked like it might collapse in the next strong wind. The roof sagged in the middle. The walls were made of rough stone with mud filling the gaps. A small garden struggled to grow in the rocky soil beside it. As Edmund approached, he saw Rosalind outside, hanging wet clothes on a line strung between two posts. Her dress was even more worn in the daylight, patched in several places with mismatched fabric. Her feet were bare and dirty, but there was something graceful about the way she moved, a quiet dignity that made her seem almost noble despite her poverty. She saw him coming and froze, her hand still gripping a wet shirt. Her eyes were wide, like a deer that had spotted a hunter. Edmund realized she was afraid of him, or at least deeply suspicious. Why would the stranger who defended her yesterday seek her out? "Please do not be afraid," Edmund said, stopping several feet away to give her space. "I just wanted to make sure you were all right." Yesterday at the well seemed difficult. Rosalind stared at him for a long moment. Up close, Edmund could see she was probably around 23 or 24. Her face was thin, showing signs of hunger, but her features were delicate and pretty. Her dark eyes held a mixture of sadness and strength that made his heart ache. "I am fine," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I am used to it." Those last 4 words hit Edmund like a punch to the stomach. She was used to cruelty. It was so normal to her that yesterday's incident was nothing special. How many times had she faced such treatment? How many years had she endured this? "No one should have to get used to being treated that way," Edmund said firmly. Rosalind's eyes flickered with something, surprise maybe, or disbelief. She turned back to her laundry, hanging another piece with shaking hands. Edmund realized she wanted him to leave but was too afraid to say so directly. "My name is Edmund," he offered, using his real name but leaving out the royal title. "I am a merchant passing through the area." "I know who you are," Rosalind said softly, still not looking at him. "Everyone in the village is talking about the stranger who stood up to Thomas at the well. They think you are foolish. They say you will learn to stay away from me like everyone else does. What if I do not want to stay away?" Now she did look at him, her eyes searching his face as if trying to understand a puzzle. "Why would you not? Everyone else does. They say I am cursed. They say bad things happen to people who get close to me. Do you believe that? Edmund asked. Rosalind hesitated. It does not matter what I believe. What matters is what they believe. And they believe I carry my mother's shame. They believe I bring bad luck, so they keep their distance and I— She paused, her voice breaking slightly. I survive. Edmund looked around at her tiny cottage, at her struggling garden, at the worn basket beside the door half filled with twisted reeds. This was barely surviving. This was existing on the very edge, one bad winter away from disaster. What do you do for work? He asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. I weave baskets, Rosalind said, gesturing to the reeds. I take in laundry from some of the bigger farms. They leave it at the edge of their property so they do not have to see me. I wash it in the stream and return it the same way. Sometimes they pay me with coins. Sometimes with old bread or vegetables they cannot sell. Edmund felt his anger rising again, but he kept his voice calm. You weave baskets? Yes, not very good ones, I'm sure, but they hold things. I need baskets, Edmund said suddenly, an idea forming in his mind. For my merchant business. I need many baskets, actually. Good, sturdy ones. Would you be willing to make some for me? I will pay you well. Rosalind's eyes widened. You want to buy my baskets? As many as you can make, and I will pay you in advance so you can buy better materials if you need them. She looked at him like he had just offered her the moon. Her hands clutched the wet cloth she was holding, and for a moment Edmund thought she might cry. But she blinked rapidly and composed herself. Why are you doing this? She whispered. You do not know me. You do not owe me anything. Edmund stepped closer, careful not to frighten her. Maybe I just think everyone deserves a chance. Maybe I am tired of seeing people judged for things they cannot control. Rosalind studied his face for a long time. Finally, she nodded slowly. I will make you baskets, good ones. The best I can make. I have no doubt they will be perfect, Edmund said with a smile. For the first time, Rosalind smiled back. It was small and uncertain, like she had forgotten how to smile and was remembering slowly. But it transformed her face, making her look younger and lighter. As Edmund walked back to the village, he realized something had shifted inside him. He had left the palace looking for meaning, for something real. He had found it in the most unexpected place, in the most rejected person in this forgotten village. Over the next few days, Edmund found reasons to return to Rosalind's cottage. He brought her money for materials. He brought her food, claiming the inn had given him too much. He asked questions about basket weaving, pretending ignorance even though he found the process genuinely interesting. Slowly, carefully, Rosalind began to open up. She told him about her mother, a kind woman who had fallen in love with a traveling man who had promised to return and never did. She told him about growing up as the village's shame, how children threw rocks at her and adults warned their kids to stay away. She told him about the loneliness, the kind that made you forget what your own voice sounded like because you went days without speaking to anyone. And Edmund listened. Really listened. Not the way he listened in the palace, waiting for meetings to end, but truly hearing every word, understanding every pain, feeling every moment of her difficult life. He also began to notice other things. How intelligent she was, teaching herself to read from an old book she had found. How hard she worked, her hands rough from labor. How she never complained, even when she clearly had every right to. How she fed the stray cats that wandered by her cottage, sharing what little food she had. This was someone special. Someone real. Someone who had every reason to be bitter and angry but somehow remained gentle and kind. Edmund found himself thinking about her constantly, looking forward to his visits, feeling lighter in her presence than he had felt in years. But he was living a lie. She thought he was a simple merchant. She had no idea she was talking to the king. And as his feelings grew deeper, that lie became heavier. How long could he keep up this pretense? And what would happen when the truth finally came out? 3 weeks had passed since Edmund arrived in Millhaven, and he had not returned to the palace once. His advisors must be losing their minds by now, but he could not bring himself to care. For the first time in his life, he felt truly alive. Every morning he found himself walking the path to Rosalind's cottage. At first he had made up excuses about checking on the baskets or discussing business matters. But now they both knew the truth, even if neither said it out loud. He came because he wanted to see her. and she, slowly but surely, had started looking forward to his visits. The baskets she made were actually beautiful. Edmund was genuinely impressed by her craftsmanship. She wove the reeds with patient, careful hands, creating patterns that were both sturdy and elegant. He had bought every single one she made, paying her more than they were worth. At first, Rosalind had protested, saying he was being too generous. But Edmund insisted, and eventually she accepted his help. With the extra money, small changes began to appear around her cottage. She bought better food, her face filling out slightly and looking healthier. She repaired some of the worst holes in her roof. She got proper shoes to replace her worn-out ones. And Edmund loved seeing these changes, knowing he had helped make them possible. But the money was not the most important thing he gave her. It was his time, his attention, his respect, things she had been denied her entire life. One afternoon, Edmund arrived to find Rosalind struggling with a large wooden beam. Part of her roof had started to collapse, and she was trying to prop it up by herself. Without asking, he took one end of the beam and helped her position it correctly. "You should have sent for me," he said, breathing hard from the effort. "You are not my servant," Rosalind replied, but her eyes were grateful. "You have already done too much." "Let me decide what is too much," Edmund said with a smile. He looked up at her sagging roof. "This needs more than a temporary fix. The whole structure is weak." "I know," Rosalind said quietly, "but I cannot afford to hire someone to repair it properly. This will have to do." "What if I help you fix it?" Edmund offered. "I am not an expert, but I have worked with wood before." This was true, actually. As a boy, before his father had died and he had become king, Edmund had loved helping the palace carpenter. It was one of his few genuinely happy memories. Rosalind looked uncertain. "You are a merchant. You have your own work to do. I cannot ask you to spend days fixing my roof." "You are not asking. I am offering. Please let me do this." There was something in his voice, almost pleading, that made Rosalind agree. The truth was, Edmund desperately wanted to do this. He wanted to work with his hands, to create something useful, to help her in a real, tangible way. Over the next week, they worked on the roof together. Edmund bought proper materials from the village, though this raised some eyebrows. Why would a merchant spend so much time and money helping the cursed girl? The gossip grew louder, but Edmund ignored it. Rosalind, however, seemed worried. "People are talking," she said one day as they sat eating lunch beside her cottage. She had made simple vegetable soup and they shared it from wooden bowls. "Let them talk," Edmund said. Though he knew his casual attitude came from privilege, he could leave this village whenever he wanted. She could not. "You do not understand," Rosalind said softly. "The more time you spend with me, the more they will turn against you too. They will stop doing business with you. They will make your life difficult. It is what they do to anyone who shows me kindness." Edmund put down his bowl and looked at her seriously. "Do you want me to stop coming?" Rosalind's face showed a flash of panic, quickly hidden. "I know, but I do not want you to suffer because of me." "Then let me worry about that," Edmund said gently. "You have spent your whole life worrying about everyone else's opinion. Maybe it is time someone stood by you regardless of what others think." Tears filled Rosalind's eyes and she quickly looked away, embarrassed by her emotion. Edmund's heart ached. How long had it been since someone had been kind to her, since someone had chosen her over the crowd's approval? As they worked together, they talked about everything. Rosalind told him about her dreams. She wanted to save enough money to move to a city, somewhere big where nobody knew her story. She wanted to open a small shop, maybe selling woven goods or doing tailoring. She wanted a life where she was not defined by her mother's mistakes. Edmund told her carefully crafted stories about his supposed merchant travels, though he mixed in real feelings and observations. He talked about the loneliness of being surrounded by people who only wanted something from you. He talked about the weight of expectations and the desire to be seen as a real person, not just a role. He was talking about being king, but Rosalind thought he meant being a successful merchant, and she understood completely. "Sometimes I think the worst part is not the insults or the cruelty," Rosalind admitted one evening as they sat watching the sunset. "It is the invisibility. Most people look right through me like I am not even there, like I am less than human." "You are not invisible to me," Edmund said quietly. "I see you, Rosalind. And what I see is someone incredibly strong, incredibly kind, and absolutely worth knowing." Rosalind turned to look at him, her eyes wide with wonder and something else. something that made Edmund's heart beat faster. They were sitting close together, their shoulders almost touching. The fading sunlight made her dark hair glow with red highlights he had never noticed before. "Why are you so kind to me?" she whispered. Edmund wanted to tell her the truth, that she had touched something in him he thought was dead, that she made him want to be better, that he thought about her every moment they were apart, but he held back, knowing his secret stood between them like an invisible wall. "Because you deserve kindness," he said instead, "because everyone does." Over the following days, their connection deepened. They developed comfortable routines. Edmund would arrive in the morning, and they would work together on various projects around her cottage. She taught him about plants and which herbs were useful for cooking or healing. He helped her expand her garden and build a better fence. They shared meals, simple but warm. They laughed together, something Rosalind admitted she rarely did. The villagers watched with growing confusion and disapproval. Some started treating Edmund with coldness. The innkeeper raised his prices. People whispered when he walked by. But Edmund did not care. For the first time in his life, he was doing something that felt completely right. One afternoon, a village boy kicked over Rosalind's basket of vegetables at the market. It was the same casual cruelty she had endured her whole life. But this time Edmund was there. He did not yell or threaten. He simply walked over, picked up the vegetables one by one and placed them back in the basket. Then he looked at the boy calmly. "Her vegetables are just as good as anyone else's. Her coins spend the same as anyone else's, and her life matters just as much as yours. Remember that." The boy ran off, but the crowd that had gathered looked thoughtful. This stranger was not afraid of them. He did not treat Rosalind like she was cursed or shameful. He treated her like she was normal, like she was valuable. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, a few people began to wonder if they had been wrong about her all along. But Edmund and Rosalind did not notice these small shifts. They were too caught up in each other, in the unexpected friendship that was rapidly becoming something deeper. Something that would soon force Edmund to face the biggest decision of his life. Every evening when he walked back to the inn, Edmund felt torn. He was falling in love with Rosalind. He knew it with absolute certainty. But she loved a merchant named Edmund, not King Edmund of Arundel. When would he tell her the truth? And would she ever forgive him for the deception? 2 months had passed since Edmund first arrived in Millhaven, and the small village had become more home to him than his palace ever had. His advisors had sent 3 separate messengers looking for him, and he had sent them all back with vague excuses. He knew he could not avoid his responsibilities forever, but every day he told himself just one more day, just one more visit with Rosalind. The changes in her were remarkable. She smiled more often now, and it was not the uncertain, frightened smile from their first meetings. This was real joy. She laughed at his jokes, teased him when he made mistakes in the garden, and had started to believe that maybe she was not cursed after all. Maybe she had just been unlucky, and maybe her luck was finally changing. Edmund found himself counting the hours until he could see her again. At night, lying in his inn room, he replayed their conversations in his mind. The way she tilted her head when she was thinking. The way she bit her lip when she was concentrating on her weaving. The way her whole face lit up when she talked about her dreams for the future. One warm afternoon, they walked together through the meadow beyond her cottage. It was a beautiful spot that Rosalind had shown him, filled with wildflowers and buzzing bees. They had packed a simple lunch and spread a blanket under an old oak tree. "Tell me more about your travels," Rosalind said, lying back on the blanket and looking up at the leaves. "You must have seen so many amazing places." Edmund felt the familiar guilt twist in his stomach. He had been to many places, but as a king on official visits, not as a merchant. Everything he told her was a mixture of truth and lies, and the weight of that deception grew heavier each day. "I have seen beautiful places," he said carefully, "but none of them felt as peaceful as this." Rosalind turned her head to look at him. "You are just saying that to be nice." "No, I mean it," Edmund said, and this was completely true. All those places, they were full of people trying to impress me, trying to get something from me. Here with you, I can just be myself. "Who is yourself?" Rosalind asked softly. "Sometimes I feel like I know you so well, and other times I feel like you are hiding something. Like there is a part of you that you keep locked away." Edmund's heart raced. She was more perceptive than he had given her credit for. Of course she had noticed. How could she not? He was constantly editing himself, afraid of saying something that would reveal his true identity. Everyone hides parts of themselves, he said, which was not really an answer. I do not, Rosalind said. I have told you everything about me. All my shame, all my pain, all my hopes. You know me completely. But I wonder if I really know you at all. Edmund looked at her, at this beautiful, honest woman who had trusted him with her whole heart, and he wanted desperately to tell her the truth. But fear held him back. What if she rejected him? What if she felt betrayed? What if she could not forgive him for lying all this time? You know the parts of me that matter, he said finally. You know my heart. Rosalind sat up, wrapping her arms around her knees. Do I? Because sometimes I look at you, and I see someone who does not quite fit in his own skin, like you are playing a part, and you are very good at it, but it is still not quite real. Maybe we are both playing parts, Edmund said quietly. You pretend you are fine with being alone, but you are not. I pretend I am free, but I am not. What are you not free from? Rosalind asked, turning to face him fully. Edmund wanted to say everything. The crown, the duties, the expectations, the loneliness of power. But instead he said, expectations, other people's plans for my life. The feeling that I do not get to choose my own path. Rosalind nodded slowly, thinking she understood, but knowing she could not fully grasp what he meant. I used to dream about having people expect things from me. That would mean I mattered enough for someone to have expectations. But I understand feeling trapped by what others want from you. I feel that every day in this village. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the wind in the trees and the distant sound of sheep bleating in someone's pasture. Edmund reached over and took Rosalind's hand. It was the first time he had held her hand, and she stiffened at first, surprised. But then her fingers curled around his, and they sat there, hands intertwined, both afraid to move and break the moment. Rosalind, Edmund said softly, if you could go anywhere, do anything, what would you choose? She thought about it seriously. I would want a small house in a town where nobody knows my story. I would have a shop where I could make beautiful things and sell them to people who appreciate them. I would have friends, real friends, who choose to spend time with me. And maybe, she paused, blushing, maybe I would have someone who loved me. Not despite who I am, but because of who I am. You already have someone who feels that way, Edmund said before he could stop himself. Rosalind's eyes went wide. What do you mean? Edmund's heart pounded so hard he thought it might break out of his chest. He had not planned to do this, not today, not like this. But the words were coming out and he could not stop them. I mean that I have fallen in love with you, Rosalind, completely and hopelessly in love with you. The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. Rosalind stared at him, her face showing shock, disbelief, and something that might have been hope. You cannot mean that, she whispered. You barely know me. I know you better than I have ever known anyone, Edmund said, still holding her hand. I know you are strong and kind and brave. I know you have survived things that would have broken most people. I know you see the good in the world even though the world has shown you mostly cruelty. I know that when you smile, really smile, it feels like the sun coming out after a storm. And I know that I do not want to spend another day without you in my life. Tears were streaming down Rosalind's face now. But I am nobody. I am the cursed girl from a forgotten village. I have nothing to offer you. You are everything, Edmund said fiercely. You are real and honest and true. Do you know how rare that is? Do you know how long I have been surrounded by people who lie with every breath, who smile while planning to betray you, who see you as nothing but a means to their own ends? You are the first person in years who has treated me like a human being, not a... He stopped himself just in time. He had almost said, not a king, and that would have revealed everything. Not a what? Rosalind asked, confused. Not a transaction, Edmund covered quickly. Not someone to use. You have been kind to me, expecting nothing in return. That is incredibly precious. Rosalind shook her head, overwhelmed. I do not understand. You could have anyone. Why would you want someone like me? Because I do not want anyone. I want you. Edmund cupped her face gently with his free hand. I love you, Rosalind. I love your strength and your gentleness. I love how hard you work and how you never complain. I love how you feed stray cats even when you barely have enough food for yourself. I love the way you see beauty in simple things. I love everything about you. I am afraid, Rosalind whispered. I am afraid this is a dream, and I will wake up alone in my cottage. and you will have been nothing but wishful thinking. This is real, Edmund promised, though guilt stabbed at him because parts of their relationship were built on lies. What I feel for you is the most real thing in my life. I love you too, Rosalind said, the words tumbling out like a confession. I have loved you for weeks now, but I thought someone like you could never love someone like me. There is no someone like you or someone like me, Edmund said. There is just us, two people who found each other against all odds. He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to, but she did not pull away. Instead, she closed the distance between them, and they shared their first kiss under the old oak tree in the meadow filled with wildflowers. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were crying. Happy tears, overwhelmed tears, tears of relief and joy and a little bit of fear about what came next. What do we do now? Rosalind asked. Now, Edmund said, though his heart was heavy with the secret he still carried. We figure out how to build a life together. But even as he said it, he knew that was impossible as long as he was lying to her. He was the king. He had responsibilities. He had a kingdom waiting for him. And Rosalind had no idea that the man she loved was living a double life that could never truly include her, unless he was willing to do something radical. That night, walking back to the inn, Edmund made a decision. He would tell her the truth. Tomorrow, he would reveal that he was King Edmund of Arundel, and he would ask her to marry him. He would face whatever consequences came from marrying a peasant, even if it meant fighting his entire court, because he had finally found something worth fighting for. Edmund barely slept that night. He lay awake rehearsing what he would say to Rosalind, how he would explain his deception, how he would convince her that his love was real even though he had been lying about who he was. Every version of the conversation he imagined ended badly, but he knew he could not keep living this double life. When morning finally came, he felt sick with nervousness. He had faced angry nobles, hostile foreign kings, and dangerous political situations without feeling this afraid. But telling Rosalind the truth felt like the most terrifying thing he had ever done. He walked slowly to her cottage, his feet feeling heavy with each step. When he arrived, he found her in her garden, humming softly to herself as she tended to the vegetables. She looked up when she heard him approach, and her face broke into that beautiful smile that made his heart ache. "You are early today," she said, brushing dirt off her hands. "I was just thinking about you." "I need to talk to you," Edmund said, and something in his voice made her smile fade. "What is wrong?" she asked, concern filling her eyes. "You look terrible. Did something happen? Can we go inside?" Edmund asked, glancing around as if the trees themselves might be listening. Rosalind led him into her small cottage. It was neat and clean despite its poverty. She had used some of the money he had given her to buy a few small comforts: a real table, proper dishes, a warm blanket. Evidence of how his presence had already changed her life. They sat at the table, and Edmund took her hands in his. They were trembling, and he was not sure if it was his hands shaking or hers. "Rosalind, what I'm about to tell you is going to be difficult to hear," he began, "and I need you to listen to everything before you react, please." "You are scaring me," Rosalind said, her voice small. "Are you leaving? Is that what this is? You're going away?" "No, yes, I mean—" Edmund took a deep breath. "I have not been completely honest with you about who I am." Rosalind pulled her hands back slightly. "What do you mean? Are you not a merchant?" "No, I'm not a merchant," Edmund said, forcing himself to meet her eyes. "My name is Edmund, that part is true. But I am not just Edmund. I am King Edmund of Arundel." The words hung in the air between them. Rosalind stared at him like he had just spoken a foreign language she did not understand. "What?" she whispered finally. "I am the king," Edmund repeated. "I came to this village 2 months ago because I needed to escape the palace. I wanted to see how real people lived. I wanted to be treated like a normal person instead of a crown, so I disguised myself and came here. And then I met you, and everything changed." Rosalind stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "This is a joke. A cruel, twisted joke." "It is not a joke," Edmund said, standing too. "I know it sounds impossible, but it is the truth. I am King Edmund, and I have fallen in love with you, and I want to marry you." "Marry me?" Rosalind's voice rose to a near shout. "You are mad. You are either mad or you are mocking me, and I cannot decide which is worse. I am neither mad nor mocking you, Edmund insisted. I love you. I want to make you my queen. Rosalind laughed, but it was a bitter, broken sound. Your queen, me? The cursed girl from Millhaven? The daughter of an unwed woman? The person this entire village treats like garbage? That is who you want to make queen? Yes, Edmund said simply. Because you are strong and kind and true. Because you are the only person who has treated me like a real person in years. Because I love you more than I have ever loved anyone. You lied to me, Rosalind said, and now tears were streaming down her face. For 2 months you lied to me every single day. Every story about being a merchant, every conversation we had, all of it was based on a lie. My feelings were never a lie, Edmund said desperately. Everything I told you about how I felt, about who I am inside, that was all real. The only thing I lied about was my title. The only thing, Rosalind repeated incredulously. You are the king. That is not a small detail, Edmund, or whoever you really are. That is everything. That changes everything. It does not change how I feel about you, Edmund insisted. But it changes everything else, Rosalind said, pacing now. Did you think this was a game? Did you think you could play pretend for a while? Have a little adventure with the poor village girl and then return to your palace with a fun story to tell? No, that is not what this was, Edmund said, his voice breaking. This was real. This is real. I am asking you to marry me. To be my wife, my queen. Stop saying that, Rosalind said, wrapping her arms around herself. Just stop. This is insane. Kings do not marry peasants. They marry princesses from other kingdoms. They marry noble ladies with proper bloodlines and dowries and political connections. They do not marry cursed girls from forgotten villages. I do not care about any of that, Edmund said. I care about you. Well, you should care, Rosalind shot back. Because your kingdom will care. Your advisors will care. Every noble in your court will care. They will never accept me. They will spend every day trying to get rid of me, to prove I am not worthy, and they will be right. They will not be right, Edmund said firmly. You are worth more than all of them combined. Rosalind shook her head, more tears falling. You do not understand. You have lived your whole life with power and respect. You have no idea what it is like to be rejected every single day, to be told you are worthless, that you are cursed, that you bring bad luck to anyone who comes near you. And now you want me to face that same rejection, but on a much bigger scale? In front of an entire kingdom? I will protect you, Edmund promised. I will not let anyone hurt you. You cannot protect me from the truth, Rosalind said quietly. And the truth is that I do not belong in your world. I am not educated. I cannot read properly. I do not know how to act like a lady, let alone a queen. I would embarrass you every single day. You could never embarrass me, Edmund said, moving closer to her. You are the most genuine person I have ever met. That is worth more than any education. Rosalind backed away from him. Do not touch me. I need to think. I need you to leave. Rosalind, please. Leave, she shouted, her voice cracking. Just go back to your palace. Go back to your real life, and forget about me. I cannot forget about you, Edmund said, his own tears falling now. I love you. You love who you thought I was, Rosalind said bitterly. You love the simple village girl who was grateful for your attention. But that is not real. None of this was real. Everything between us was real, Edmund insisted. Get out, Rosalind said, turning away from him. Please, just get out. Edmund stood there for a long moment, wanting to argue, wanting to make her understand. But he could see her shoulders shaking with sobs, and he realized that pushing her right now would only make things worse. I will go, he said softly, but I'm not giving up on us. I will give you time to think, but I am not leaving Millhaven. I will be at the inn when you are ready to talk. Rosalind said nothing. She kept her back to him, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as if she was trying to hold herself together. Edmund walked to the door, then paused. I am sorry I lied about who I was, but I am not sorry I fell in love with you. That was the most honest thing I have ever done. He left, closing the door gently behind him. As soon as he was gone, Rosalind collapsed onto her bed, sobbing into her thin pillow. Her world had just shattered into a million pieces. The merchant she had fallen in love with did not exist. He was a king who claimed he wanted to marry her, which was either a beautiful dream or a terrible nightmare. She did not know which. All she knew was that everything had changed and she did not know if she could ever trust him again. How could she, when their entire relationship had been built on a lie? And even if she could forgive him, how could she possibly become a queen? The very idea was absurd. She was nobody. She was nothing. She was the girl people threw rocks at and called cursed. How could someone like her ever stand beside a king? As she lay there crying, she realized something even worse. Despite everything, despite the lies and the impossibility of it all, she still loved him. And that might be the cruelest part of all. 5 days passed and Rosalind did not leave her cottage. She could not face the village, could not face Edmund, could not face the impossible situation her life had become. She lived off the small amount of food she had stored and tried to make sense of everything. The man she loved was the king. It sounded ridiculous even thinking it. Kings existed in stories, in distant castles, in a world so far removed from hers that they might as well be living on different planets. Yet Edmund, her Edmund, was one of them, had been one of them all along. She replayed every conversation in her mind. All those moments she had thought were genuine. Had they been lies? When he talked about feeling trapped by expectations, he had been talking about being king. When he said he wanted to be treated like a normal person, he meant he was tired of being royalty. Everything had a double meaning she had missed, and now he wanted to marry her. The thought made her feel physically ill. Not because she did not love him, she did desperately, but because she knew what that would mean. She would be thrust into a world where she did not belong, surrounded by people who would despise her, trying to fill a role she was completely unprepared for. She would fail, and when she failed, she would not just embarrass herself, she would embarrass Edmund too. On the 6th day, there was a knock on her door. Rosalind's heart leaped, thinking it was Edmund, but when she opened it, she found the innkeeper's wife, who had never spoken to her before. "Just thought you should know," the woman said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Your merchant friend is still at the inn. Except he is not really a merchant, is he? Word is he is actually the king, and he has been lying to all of us." Rosalind said nothing, but her face must have shown something because the woman smiled cruelly. "Oh, you knew, did you? Well, everyone knows now. His royal guard showed up yesterday looking for him. Caused quite a stir, and people are saying he wants to marry you." She laughed. "Can you imagine? The cursed girl becoming queen, though I suppose it makes sense. He must have been playing some kind of game, getting a thrill from slumming it with the village reject." "Get away from my house," Rosalind said quietly. "Just trying to be neighborly," the woman said. "Thought you should know what people are saying. They think you bewitched him, used dark magic or something. There is talk of running you out of the village before you bring more shame on us." She left and Rosalind closed the door, her hands shaking. So now everyone knew. Now she was not just the cursed girl. She was the girl who had somehow tricked the king. The accusations of witchcraft did not even surprise her. People always needed an explanation for things they did not understand, and they certainly could not understand why a king would want her. That evening, Edmund knocked on her door. Rosalind considered not answering, but she knew they needed to talk eventually. She opened the door just a crack. "Can I come in?" Edmund asked. He looked terrible. His eyes were red and tired, his clothes rumpled. He had clearly not been sleeping well. "No," Rosalind said. "We can talk here. Please, Rosalind. Just 5 minutes. Let me explain." Against her better judgment, she let him in. They stood awkwardly in her small cottage, the space that had once felt warm and comfortable now feeling cold and strange. "Your guards came," Rosalind said. "Everyone knows now?" "I know. I am sorry. I asked them to wait to give you time, but they insisted on finding me. Apparently there are urgent matters at the palace that need my attention." "Then you should go," Rosalind said flatly. "Not without you," Edmund said. "Rosalind, I meant what I said. I want to marry you. I want you to come back to the palace with me." "Why?" Rosalind asked. "Why would you want that? You could have anyone. Any princess, any noble lady. Women who are educated and refined and know how to be queens. Why would you choose me?" "Because I do not love them. I love you." "Love is not enough," Rosalind said, and saying the words broke her heart. "Love does not prepare me to be a queen. Love does not teach me how to run a palace or host foreign dignitaries or navigate court politics. Love does not make me suitable for that life. I can teach you those things," Edmund said desperately. "We can learn together. You are smart and capable. You can do this. No, I cannot, Rosalind said firmly. And deep down you know it. I would be a disaster. Your advisors would hate me. The nobles would mock me. Other kingdoms would see my appointment as a sign of weakness. I would hurt you, Edmund. I would hurt your ability to rule effectively. I do not care about any of that, Edmund said. Well, you should, Rosalind replied, her voice rising. You are the king. You have responsibilities to your people. You cannot just throw that all away because you fell in love with a peasant during some identity crisis. Edmund flinched like she had slapped him. Is that what you think this was? An identity crisis? I do not know what to think, Rosalind said, tears starting to flow again. All I know is that you lied to me for 2 months. You made me fall in love with someone who does not really exist. The merchant Edmund was kind and simple and present. King Edmund has duties and kingdoms and a whole life I cannot begin to understand. I am the same person, Edmund insisted. No, you are not, Rosalind said. And even if you were, it does not matter. We are from 2 different worlds, Edmund. We always have been. I just did not know it because you were pretending to be from mine. I was not pretending to care about you, Edmund said, his voice breaking. That was real. That is still real. Maybe, Rosalind acknowledged. But caring is not enough. Love is not enough. Sometimes love cannot bridge certain gaps, and the gap between a king and a cursed peasant is too wide. Stop calling yourself that, Edmund said angrily. You are not cursed. You are not less than anyone else. But I am, Rosalind said simply. Maybe not in worth as a human being, but in everything that matters for being a queen. I have no education. I have no grace. I have no training. I would be a mockery. And worse than embarrassing myself, I would embarrass you. I would make it harder for you to rule. I would give your enemies ammunition to use against you. I love you too much to do that to you. Edmund stared at her, and she could see the moment when he realized she was serious. She was not just afraid or overwhelmed. She was refusing him. She was choosing to let him go. So that is it? He asked quietly. You are saying no? I am saying no, Rosalind confirmed, even though every word felt like tearing out a piece of her heart. You need to go back to your palace. You need to marry someone appropriate, and you need to forget about me. I cannot forget about you, Edmund said. You will, Rosalind said. In time you will remember me as a foolish mistake. A brief moment of rebellion before you return to your real life, and that is how it should be. You are wrong, Edmund said, tears streaming down his face now. You are so wrong about all of this. But I cannot force you to come with me. I cannot force you to believe in us. No, you cannot, Rosalind agreed. They stood there in silence, both crying, both heartbroken. Finally, Edmund moved toward the door. If you change your mind, he said, I will be at the inn for 2 more days. After that, I have to return to the capital. But the offer stands, Rosalind. Always. If you want to be with me, I will find a way to make it work. Goodbye, Edmund, Rosalind said softly. He left without another word. Rosalind watched through her small window as he walked away, his shoulders slumped with grief. Then she collapsed on the floor and sobbed until she had no tears left. She had just refused a proposal from a king. She had sent away the man she loved. It was the right decision, the smart decision, the only reasonable decision. So why did it feel like she had just made the biggest mistake of her life? Outside, the village was buzzing with the scandal. The king had been living among them, disguised as a merchant. He had fallen for the cursed girl. His guards were here now, preparing for his departure. Everyone had an opinion, and most of those opinions were cruel. Some said Rosalind had bewitched him. Others said she had seduced him for money and power. A few, very few, wondered if maybe the king had simply fallen in love, and if maybe Rosalind was not as cursed as they had always believed. But those voices were drowned out by the majority who saw this as confirmation of everything they had always thought about her. Rosalind heard none of this. She stayed in her cottage alone with her broken heart, wondering how she was supposed to go back to her life now that she knew what she had lost. Edmund sat in his inn room staring at the wall, completely numb. His chief advisor, Lord Whitmore, paced back and forth, delivering a lecture that Edmund was barely hearing. Your Majesty, this situation has become completely unmanageable. You disappeared for 2 months. 2 months. The kingdom nearly fell into chaos. Treaties went unsigned. Disputes went unresolved. And for what? For some village girl? Her name is Rosalind, Edmund said quietly. I do not care what her name is, Lord Whitmore snapped. What I care about is getting you back to the capital before you do any more damage to your reputation." "My reputation," Edmund repeated, finally looking at his advisor. "Is that all that matters to you? My reputation?" "Your reputation is the kingdom's reputation, Your Majesty. You represent all of us, and this little adventure of yours has made you look foolish." Something in Edmund snapped. He stood up abruptly, his chair falling backward with a crash. "Foolish? You think it is foolish to want to understand my own people? You think it is foolish to fall in love with someone genuine and real instead of some political arrangement designed to benefit everyone except me?" Lord Whitmore opened his mouth to respond, but Edmund was not finished. "I have been king for 8 years. 8 years of doing everything you and the council told me to do. I signed the treaties you wanted. I made the alliances you suggested. I attended the endless ceremonies and listened to the endless complaints and tried to be the perfect, dutiful king. And I was miserable. Completely, utterly miserable. Your Majesty—" "I am not finished," Edmund said, his voice rising. "Then I came to this village and I met Rosalind. And for the first time in years I felt alive. I felt like a real person instead of just a crown. She saw me, really saw me, not King Edmund, just Edmund. And she treated me with more kindness and honesty than everyone in the palace combined." "She is a peasant," Lord Whitmore said, as if that explained everything. "She is a person," Edmund corrected. "A person who has survived hardship you cannot even imagine. A person who has been rejected and mistreated her entire life, but somehow remained kind and gentle. A person worth 10 of you." Lord Whitmore's face turned red. "You cannot be serious about marrying her." "I am completely serious. I love her and I want to make her my queen. The council will never allow it. The nobles will rebel. Other kingdoms will see it as a sign of weakness." "Then let them rebel," Edmund said. "Let them see it however they want. I am done living my life according to what everyone else thinks I should do." But Lord Whitmore's words had struck a chord. Edmund thought about what Rosalind had said. She had been right about one thing. His choice would affect more than just them. It would affect the kingdom. And while he did not care what the nobles thought of him personally, he did care about his ability to rule effectively. That night, Edmund could not sleep. He kept replaying Rosalind's words. She thought she would hurt him, hurt his reign by being his queen. She loved him enough to let him go rather than risk damaging him. How could he prove to her that she was wrong? How could he show her that he was willing to fight for their love? The next morning, Edmund made a decision. He called the village council together for a meeting. The entire village turned out to watch, curious about what the king wanted to say. Edmund stood before them, no longer hiding who he was, wearing his royal clothes for the first time since arriving in Millhaven. He looked every inch a king, and the villagers shifted nervously. "I came to your village 2 months ago in disguise," Edmund began. "I wanted to understand how ordinary people lived. I wanted to escape the palace and experience real life. And I did. I experienced your kindness," he paused, "and I experienced your cruelty." The villagers looked uncomfortable. They knew what he was referring to. "There is a woman in this village named Rosalind. For her entire life you have treated her as less than human. You have mocked her, excluded her, and blamed her for circumstances beyond her control. You called her cursed. You made her life a daily hell, and why? Because her mother made a mistake? Because she was born out of wedlock? Your Majesty," one of the council members started. "I am not finished," Edmund said sharply. "I got to know Rosalind. I saw how hard she works. I saw her kindness to animals and strangers. I saw her intelligence and resilience. And I fell in love with her. I asked her to marry me, to become my queen." Gasps echoed through the crowd. Even though rumors had spread, hearing it confirmed by the king himself was shocking. "She refused me," Edmund continued. "Not because she does not love me, but because she thinks she is not good enough. Because you have spent her entire life convincing her that she is worthless. Because she believes she would embarrass me and harm my ability to rule." Edmund looked out at the sea of faces, seeing shame on some, defiance on others, curiosity on a few. "I am here to tell you that Rosalind is wrong about herself. She is not cursed. She is not worthless. She is one of the finest people I have ever met, and the fact that she survived your treatment with her kindness intact is a testament to her strength." He paused, letting his words sink in. "I am going to make some changes in this village. First, I am redistributing resources. The poorest families, those who have been overlooked and ignored, will receive support. New wells will be built so everyone has access to clean water. The roads will be repaired, and there will be consequences for those who treat their neighbors with cruelty. The villagers murmured among themselves. Some looked pleased, others worried about what these changes might mean for them. Second, Edmund continued, I am publicly declaring that Rosalind is under royal protection. Anyone who harms her, threatens her, or spreads lies about her will answer to me personally. Is that clear? The villagers nodded quickly. Finally, Edmund said, his voice softening, I want you all to understand something. The measure of a person is not their birth or their wealth or their family name. It is their character. It is how they treat others, especially those who cannot defend themselves. By that measure, Rosalind is worth more than most of you, and if she will still have me, I will be proud to make her my queen. With that, Edmund stepped down from the platform. The villagers erupted in conversation, some supportive, others outraged. But Edmund did not care about their reactions. He only cared about one person's reaction. He walked straight to Rosalind's cottage. She was standing outside, having heard the commotion and come to see what was happening. She had heard his entire speech. Tears were streaming down her face. What did you just do? She whispered as he approached. I told the truth, Edmund said. I defended you publicly. I put my reputation on the line for you. Because that is what you do for someone you love. Edmund, your advisors, are already furious with me, yes. Lord Whitmore threatened to resign. Half the council thinks I have lost my mind, and I do not care. I cannot force you to marry me, Rosalind, but I can show you that I am serious, that I am willing to face whatever consequences come from choosing you. Before Rosalind could respond, they heard horses approaching. Lord Whitmore arrived with more royal guards and several other advisors. They looked angry and worried. Your Majesty, Lord Whitmore said, dismounting quickly, I must speak with you immediately. News has arrived from the capital. Princess Helena of Westmarch has sent an urgent message. Your betrothal to her was never formally dissolved. She is on her way here with her father's army. Edmund's face went pale. He had forgotten about Princess Helena. Their betrothal had been arranged when they were children, a political alliance between kingdoms. He had assumed it would eventually be dissolved, but apparently Helena and her father had other ideas. An army? Edmund repeated. They claim they are coming to remind you of your obligations, Lord Whitmore explained. But, Your Majesty, there are reports they may try to force the marriage. This is a disaster. Edmund looked at Rosalind, who had taken several steps back, her face showing fear and confusion. This is what I meant, she said quietly. This is exactly what I meant. You have responsibilities. You have commitments. And I am just a distraction from all of that. No, Edmund said firmly. You are not a distraction. You are the only thing that matters. And I am not marrying Princess Helena. I never agreed to that betrothal. My father arranged it before he died, and I am dissolving it right now. Your Majesty, you cannot just dissolve a betrothal to a neighboring kingdom, Lord Whitmore protested. It could start a war. Then it starts a war, Edmund said. I will not be forced into a marriage I do not want. I will not abandon Rosalind. Not for Helena, not for the council, not for anyone. He turned back to Rosalind, taking her hands in his. This is my choice. You are my choice. I know you are scared. I know you think you are not ready, but I believe in you, Rosalind. I believe in us. Please give us a chance. Rosalind looked at him, then at the advisors, then at the villagers who had gathered to watch this royal drama unfold. Her whole life had been about hiding, about making herself small, about accepting that she did not deserve good things. But here was a king, willing to risk everything for her. How could she keep refusing him? How could she keep rejecting this chance at happiness? I am terrified, she admitted. So am I, Edmund said with a small smile. But we can be terrified together. Rosalind looked into Edmund's eyes and saw nothing but love and determination. She had spent her entire life being told she was not enough, that she was cursed, that she did not deserve happiness. But here was the most powerful man in the kingdom, telling her she was worth fighting for, worth risking everything for. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will marry you. Edmund's face lit up with joy. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight as tears of relief streamed down both their faces. Around them, the villagers erupted into confused chatter. Some were moved by the display of genuine love. Others were scandalized. But Edmund and Rosalind did not notice any of them. In that moment, they only existed for each other. Lord Whitmore cleared his throat loudly. Your Majesty, this is all very touching, But we still have the problem of Princess Helena and her father's army approaching. We need to return to the capital immediately and deal with this situation before it escalates into a war. Edmund pulled back from Rosalind but kept holding her hand. You are right. We need to return to the capital. We all do. He looked at Rosalind. Are you ready? Because once we leave this village, everything changes. I do not think I will ever be ready, Rosalind admitted. But I am willing to try, for you. For us. The journey to the capital took 3 days. Rosalind rode beside Edmund in the royal carriage, overwhelmed by the luxury of it all. The soft cushions, the silk curtains, the way servants rushed to fulfill every need. It was all so foreign to her. Lord Whitmore and the other advisors rode alongside, throwing disapproving glances at Rosalind whenever they thought Edmund was not looking. During the journey, Edmund tried to prepare her for palace life. He told her about the various nobles she would meet, the protocols she would need to learn, the expectations that would be placed on her. With each new piece of information, Rosalind felt more terrified. How could she possibly do this? But Edmund was patient. He held her hand when she trembled. He reassured her when she wanted to turn back. He told her stories about his own struggles with royal life, how he had felt inadequate and overwhelmed when he first became king at age 18, after his father's sudden death. You do not have to be perfect, he told her. You just have to be yourself. That is all I ask. When they finally arrived at the palace, Rosalind thought she might faint. The building was enormous, all white stone and tall towers and beautiful gardens. She had never imagined such grandeur existed. Servants lined up to greet them, bowing low as Edmund passed. They looked at Rosalind with open curiosity and confusion. Who was this peasant girl in worn clothes arriving with the king? Edmund's first order of business was meeting with his full council. He brought Rosalind with him despite Lord Whitmore's protests. The council chamber was intimidating, filled with serious-looking men in expensive robes. They all stood when Edmund entered, then looked shocked when Rosalind entered beside him. Gentlemen, Edmund said, taking his seat at the head of the long table, I have an announcement to make. I am going to marry Rosalind of Millhaven. She will be your queen. The room erupted. Council members shouted over each other, their voices rising in protest. Your Majesty, you cannot be serious. This is unprecedented. What about Princess Helena? The people will never accept a peasant queen. Edmund raised his hand and slowly the room quieted. When he spoke, his voice was calm but carried absolute authority. I am completely serious. As for Princess Helena, I am formally dissolving our betrothal. It was arranged without my consent when I was a child. I will send her a letter explaining my decision, along with compensation for any insult her family feels they have suffered. If her father wants war over this, then we will face war, but I will not be forced into a loveless political marriage. Your Majesty, one of the older council members said more gently, we understand you have feelings for this woman, but marriage is not just about feelings for people in your position. It is about alliances, about strengthening the kingdom, about everything except happiness, Edmund interrupted. I have heard these arguments my entire life. Duty before personal desires, responsibility before happiness, and I followed those rules, and they nearly broke me. He stood up, looking at each council member in turn. I spent 2 months living as a common man in a common village. I saw poverty I never knew existed in my own kingdom. I saw good people struggling while we sit here in luxury debating political marriages. I saw cruelty and kindness in their purest forms. And I met Rosalind, a woman who has survived more hardship than anyone in this room could imagine, yet remained kind and gentle and strong. Edmund walked over to where Rosalind sat, placing a hand on her shoulder. She was trembling, terrified by all these powerful men staring at her. She is not noble-born. She has no political connections. She cannot bring us alliances or wealth. But she has something far more valuable. She has genuine character. She has real compassion for the common people. She understands their struggles in a way none of us ever could. And she will make me a better king. The council members exchanged uncertain glances. This was not the argument they had expected. Your Majesty, Lord Whitmore said carefully, even if we support this decision, which I am not saying we do, the people might not accept her. There could be riots, protests. Then we will deal with them, Edmund said firmly. But I believe you underestimate the people. They are tired of distant nobility who do not understand their lives. Rosalind represents them. She is one of them. That could be our greatest strength, not our weakness. Another council member spoke up, a younger man named Lord Davies. I must admit, Your Majesty makes an interesting point. The common people have felt increasingly disconnected from the crown. A queen who came from their ranks might actually improve relations. This is madness, another councillor muttered, but he sounded less certain now. Edmund continued his passionate speech. I am willing to abdicate if necessary. I am willing to give up my crown rather than give up Rosalind. But I do not think it will come to that. I think if you give her a chance, if the kingdom gives her a chance, they will see what I see. Someone special, someone worth believing in. The room fell silent. The threat of abdication hung in the air. If Edmund stepped down, there would be chaos. The line of succession was unclear. There could be civil war. The council knew they were in a corner. Finally, the oldest council member, Lord Harrington, spoke. He had been silent until now, watching everything with sharp eyes. I served your father, Your Majesty, and your grandfather before him. I have seen many kings make many decisions, some wise, some foolish. He paused, studying Edmund carefully. But I have never seen a king as passionate about anything as you are about this woman. That counts for something. He turned to look at Rosalind directly for the first time. She met his gaze nervously. Can you read, girl? He asked bluntly. A little, my lord, Rosalind said quietly. I taught myself from an old book. I'm not very good at it. Can you do numbers? Yes, my lord. I had to learn to keep track of my earnings and expenses. Have you ever managed servants or a household? I have only ever had myself to manage, my lord. But I am a quick learner and I work hard. Lord Harrington nodded slowly. At least she is honest. She does not pretend to be something she is not. He looked back at Edmund. She will need extensive training. Tutors for reading, writing, etiquette, history, politics. It will take years for her to be truly ready. Then we have years, Edmund said. I am not asking her to be perfect tomorrow. I am asking for the chance to prove that she can do this. Lord Harrington sighed deeply. Very well, Your Majesty. I will support this marriage. But, he raised a finger, she must work harder than any of us have ever worked. She must prove herself worthy of the crown, not just to us but to the entire kingdom. Can you do that, girl? Rosalind stood up, her legs shaking but her voice steady. I can try, my lord. I cannot promise I will succeed, but I promise I will give everything I have. Something in her words, her honesty and determination, seemed to move some of the council members. One by one, they began to nod their agreement. Not all of them, some still looked angry or disapproving. But enough to move forward. The next challenge came 3 days later when Princess Helena arrived with her father, King Robert of Westmarch, and a small army. The palace was tense as they rode through the gates. Edmund met them in the throne room, with Rosalind standing beside him. He had wanted her there, to show he was serious about his choice. Princess Helena was beautiful, exactly what everyone expected a queen to be. Tall, elegant, with golden hair and perfect manners. She looked at Rosalind with barely concealed disdain, clearly unable to understand why she was being rejected for a peasant. King Edmund, she said coldly, I received your letter. I must say I am deeply insulted. I apologize for any insult, Edmund said diplomatically, but I cannot marry you, Princess Helena. I am in love with someone else. Love? King Robert laughed harshly. What does love have to do with royal marriage? This is about duty, about alliance, about power. For you, perhaps, Edmund said, but I choose to believe marriage should be about more than political gain. You choose? King Robert's face turned red. Your father and I made an agreement. You are bound by honor to uphold it. An agreement made when I was 6 years old, Edmund countered.